So, I'll be entirely honest, I've never been one for horror. You can blame it on my experiences as a kid. The right scary movie at the right time pretty much made it so that if the main theme of your movie was spooks and scares, chances are I wasn't going to see it. Only in recent years have I really delved into anything that could be even remotely considered frightening. But despite this, there was always a bit of a subgenre of horror that I would watch, and I would watch with abandon. Horror comedy. Anything that could scare, but could also make me laugh is something that I was always going to be big into. And as much as I love to talk about one of my favorite movies that I feel like does this perfectly, Evil Dead 2, I thought I would actually be able to talk about a pair of movies that helped me get to the point where I could actually watch something like Evil Dead. And the first one is unique because, well, traditional horror of any kind just wasn't what you expected from this series, much less the direct-to-video movie about it. Let's talk about Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Hello everyone, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. It's been a long time since we've looked at Scooby-Doo on this channel, it being one of my earlier videos focusing on the crossover between him and Courage the Cowardly Dog. I remember this so clearly because this was when I finally gave up supporting Adobe as my video editing software. Not sponsored here at all, by the way, but in all seriousness, if you're going to be interested in making videos online, grab yourself DaVinci Resolve. Regardless of that, there were a lot of issues with my video back then, mainly boiling down to my own lack of skill and confidence as a reviewer. As such, we didn't really delve into Scooby-Doo's history, which we kinda need to do now because of how it relates to Zombie Island. Having been a TV staple since the 1960s, Scooby-Doo had actually fallen upon harder times when the 90s rolled around. The only new versions of anything relating to the dog was the 1988 series A Pup Named Scooby-Doo and a direct-to-TV movie known as Arabian Nights. Neither of these stuck around for very long because of various reasons, with Scooby-Doo itself moving from channel to channel in reruns for years, to the point where it essentially became filler for any TV channel that didn't know what they wanted in that particular time slot. It wouldn't be until Turner Broadcasting buying Hanna-Barbera in 1991 that we would see the franchise and its siblings go along with the Hanna-Barbera line over to Cartoon Network. Now, from what I've been able to look up, there's one of two things being said about this series and this movie. The first is that, now that Cartoon Network had everything Scooby-Doo under its umbrella, constant reruns on an otherwise empty time slot got enough interest in the series to do something new with it, leading to the creation of Zombie Island. While others say that it's because of Zombie Island that it effectively saved the series, as it was only living on reruns otherwise, simply used to fill time like it had been on those other channels. I'm willing to believe the latter of these two possible ideas, just knowing how TV channels used to work back in the 90s, but I've been unable to find hard facts to either idea to support my findings. That said, anyone who's even remotely familiar with Scooby knows the basic rundown. Do and the kids get lost or get called over somewhere, end up finding a mystery, end up solving it through a bunch of hijinks, and almost always discover that it was some guy in a mask. And while there were some earlier cartoons that had Scooby meeting with real monsters and spirits, such as the 13 Ghosts and Ghoul School, it still had that feel of the original series, which is to say, safe and not something that felt threatening. So, to compare, let's look at the opening scene of how Zombie Island is done. Now tell me, does this feel like the normal 60s Scooby to you? Hell, does it feel like modern Scooby-Doo now? It just goes to remind me that Hanna-Barbera, for all of their reused backgrounds and simple animation, can give us some quality scenery and action when they're actually putting in the work. We saw this in Halloween Tree, and now we're seeing it again. But what's interesting is just how well they're able to blend this with the traditional Scooby-Doo humor. Hell, they even do a small nod to the classic running between the doors gag, while at the same time having Velma and Daphne dangling over a moat, while Fred's getting clawed at, with actual damage, by the monster. For characters who were so used to just being captured or tied up by the monsters, seeing them in actual danger is a bit of a new one, and it's all done to an updated version of the original Scooby-Doo theme song, the first of 3 that are in the film. It's a pretty decent variation on the old theme, too. Turns out that the entire capture of the villain, however, is just a flashback from an older Daphne on a talk show of all things. Through some slightly clunky exposition, we learn that the gang got bored of all the mysteries being just thieves or criminals in masks, and eventually split up. Daphne became a reporter, enough to be popular enough to get on the talk show in the first place. Fred is her crew and cameraman, Velma runs a mystery bookshop, and Scooby and Shaggy work at an airport as security catching contraband. It should be noted at this point that Frank Welker, the original voice of Fred, is the only member of the original cast to reprise his role for the film. Casey Kasem, Shaggy's original voice actor, refused to reprise the role on the fact that he was a strict vegetarian and would refuse to do the character if he was shown eating meat. Billy West would go on to voice Shaggy instead, and I can't find the reason why the original actresses for Daphne and Velma weren't grabbed, but both Mary Kay Bergman and BJ Ward are solid enough in their roles. And finally, Scott Innes would be Scooby, as Don Messick had actually passed away about a year beforehand, with the movie itself dedicated to his memory, something I like to think the man would have enjoyed. Either way, Daphne mentions that she misses everyone, and that serves as a brainchild for Fred to get the gang back together, which they do after some minor hijinks with Scooby and Shaggy. So yes, the Scooby gang has been a part idea lasted for all of 5 minutes, which is honestly how it should be. Yes, people move on and times change, but to steal a little bit of a lesson from the ponies, some friendships just last forever, and Mystery Inc. has always felt like one of those groups that would always at the very least stay in touch, if nothing else. This is where the second song of the movie comes in, The Ghost Is Here. And while I know there's a lot of love for the final song, something we'll be getting to closer to the end of the movie, this is the song that I feel fits the Scooby Gang the best. Not just because the song itself is talking about how every ghost or monster that the group comes across is just phony criminals, but also the style of the song. A lot of the instrumental has that twangy guitar heard from the original series, while also being something that sounds like a bit of a modern take on a song from the 60s, which had a lot of that guitar in their popular music. It even has the trait of the band doing that style of vocal harmony like you would hear from the Beatles or the Beach Boys. Mind you, this is me saying this with absolutely no musical skill, theory, or training outside of being a half-decent whistler, but it made me feel like this song fits Scooby and his friends best. I'm also wanting to take this moment to mention something interesting about this montage that hit me during my rewatch. While we get a lot of the traditional setup for Scooby, mostly crooks chasing the gang, there's one at the start that's a bit different. Instead of finding a monster, the group just finds a fake fortune teller and her ghosts, before it's revealed to just be a hologram. This is honestly an idea that I kind of wish was used a bit more often for the Scooby crew. Instead of them going out and just running into a criminal at random, they instead purposely seek out the weird and the oddities. And it would result in instances like this, where it wasn't any nefarious scheme to steal a local bank's money or whatever, but instead just someone wanting to promote abilities that they didn't have. It goes along with the evolution of dealing with the real monsters on occasion, showing that there is supernatural about, but we'll talk about that a bit later. It's in the heart of Louisiana that we eventually get our hook to the main movie proper, as Fred, Velma, and Daphne end up chatting with a local girl named Lena, played by a young Tara Strong before she even got that last name. She works at a mansion on Moonscar Island and invites the gang there. And while it's another small bit, I do like this being a bit of an evolution on everyone's characters here. Fred being the face of the group, being the one to talk the most with Lena, as well as being the skeptic of the group, not really believing in all the ghosts. Daphne's the believer, though not to the point of her pulling out a corkboard and string, but while also being the main motivator to push the others into looking for some mysteries. Velma, of course, is their researcher and tech whiz, even if her skill in this movie is limited to a quick Google search. It's through her that we learn that there's been a lot of disappearances on the island over the years, leading to some credence that something weird is going on. So what are Shaggy and Scooby? Comic relief. No, I'm actually serious here. The two of them are here to get the laughs out of the audience, and for Scooby in particular, he's the one that really still retains a lot of his toony aspects. He squashes, he stretches, and physics as a whole tends to kind of just ignore him for the most part. Unless there's something really spooky going on, and then he's in as much danger as the rest of the gang. This is where we get to see Hanna-Barbera really show off their background game, all while building up Jacques, the ferryman, as a minor character, followed by Snakebite, another minor character. Neither of these two have much importance to the story outside of the fact that they're there to be the possible culprits for those who came into the movie expecting your standard Scooby-Doo storyline. That, and the fact that they're voiced by Jim Cummings and Mark Hamill respectively. Why do they get two legendary voice actors to play bit parts is beyond me, but it wouldn't be the first time that the two have done minor characters like this, or the first time that Scooby-Doo has gotten a big name and didn't do much with them. Though, to be entirely honest, part of the reason why it feels like they got bit parts is because the movie itself isn't that long, only being an hour and 15 minutes, and it spends a solid part of that movie to build atmosphere and tone. It's to the film's benefit, to be sure, since you can feel from the music and animation alone just how something feels a tad off about where the cast is now. After a scene in which we get the only time in history I can recall Scooby actually acting like a dog, where? We meet up with the owner of the island, Simone Lenoir, who, after some apologies from the gang, invites them to come and record the house for the natural hauntings that happen there. We also get introduced to the gardener, Beau, giving us now 3 suspects on who can actually be doing things. Or so you'd think, as we get to this bit to really jumpstart the mystery of the movie.
That'll warm us up.
It's from here that we really hit that true balance of a classic Scooby-Doo mystery with actual ghost story. We bounce back and forth between the growing story of what's actually happening on the island and the normal Scooby antics. While the boys are constantly getting their gags and food, we learn about the pirates and their leader, Morgan Moonscar, all thanks to a little bit of property damage from Velma. The movie even leads us to try and think that this is still a normal Scooby-Doo mystery by Fred insisting that the ghost is simply a guy in a mask. But that's kind of hard to believe after Scooby and Shaggy end up face to face with a zombie after some of their shenanigans, with it being Moonscar himself. And it's very much your traditional zombie, slow shambler and all. Though he pretty much vanishes after the boys give him the slip, leading both audiences and Velma to really put the suspicion onto Beau the gardener. And this is honestly something I'm a little surprised that we don't see more often in modern Scooby-Doo itself, the gang being suspicious of likely suspects right off the bat. This is where the movie kind of falls into a back and forth between mystery solving and Scooby and Shaggy doing something silly that the series was kind of well known for. It's a bit more obvious to me now looking at this movie a bit more seriously and really critiquing it, but there were points in the script where I had to ask myself, how do I talk about a movie when it's a lot of just silly cartoon jokes? In this case, I'm just really skipping past most of them to talk about the one that really leads us to the next plot point. In particular, the boys eating some super hot peppers and dunking their heads into the bayou to cool off. Now, ignoring the fact that we're talking about wetland water, which, last I checked, isn't the cleanest in the world, there's another reason entirely I think Scooby and Shaggy are going to need to worry about the water they just drank. So, is zombie-tainted water even worse than corpse-tainted water, or is it about the same? Probably depends on if it's a contagious zombie setup like in Resident Evil. The rest of the gang go out to search for the boys upon hearing their screams, from halfway across the island, mind you, which is where they meet up with the gardener Bo again. With the classic, "Let's split up, gang," we get Daphne and Fred going one way with Velma and Bo into the other. And is it just me, or is this one of those few times where a suspect in a mystery actually gets dragged along for part of it? Though that said, it actually feels good that after years of chasing down ghosts, you've got the gang ready and willing to point fingers at the people they think are the most likely of suspects. Also love how Zombie Island has actually a confident Daphne without just having her act like Buffy while being played by Buffy.
Are you?
I can handle myself.
But for all the work and everything else going on, Skeptic Fred is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the zombies they're dealing with are real. After losing the camera to quicksand, because of course any evidence can't be kept around, we get to the final main part that everyone knows from this movie, the song Terror Time Again.
You hear the screeching of an owl, you hear the wind begin to howl, and it's terror time again.
Seriously, if you're talking to anyone who has ever seen this movie, I am willing to bet dollars to donuts that this is the thing that they're the most familiar with. It's a catchy, rocking out song that, along with the visuals and knowledge that the Scooby Gang are officially running from actual monsters, just kind of locks itself in as a solid memory. It sticks around in your mind, and I know there's going to be so many people watching this that are going to be humming this song long after we're done here. We're getting to the point of the film where all the mysteries are revealed, as Scooby and Shaggy eventually run into this cave in the bayou and find 3 little magical dolls made of their friends, each one with a little bit of their personal effects on them. Velma and Freddy got bits of clothing, while Daphne has a little bit of her hair. I originally questioned why the colors of Fred and Velma are reversed, as blue and orange are their respective colors, but the movie makes a point of showing off Fred's ascot and Velma's cleaning cloth for her glasses earlier on in the film. And really, with zombies now being proven real, magical voodoo dolls are pretty small potatoes. A scream from Lena brings the gang back to the house, only to find that Simone has been taken by the zombies. Though I like to think that most kids would probably be able to notice a bunch of holes in her story, even if Velma didn't look directly at the viewers in a manner that shouted, "This is bullcrap." Going down the tunnel is where everything is revealed, Simone using the voodoo dolls to tie down the gang. And this is where the villains unmask themselves for who they are, in the sense that they transform. Now, as much as I would love to use the syndrome "you've got me monologuing" bit here, Simone actually spends the next few minutes of the movie explaining the whole cat monster thing to us, which, fair, we need to know why. Turns out that she and Lena were once simple villagers about 200 years ago, where the only real oddities about them being their worship of a cat god on the harvest moon. When the pirate Morgan Moonscar came to their island, he pushed all the settlers into alligator-infested waters, with Lena and Simone being the only ones to escape. Grieving, they called upon their god to help them get revenge on Moonscar, turning them both into the cat creatures. From this point onward, the two were immortal, with the caveat that they needed to drain the life force of someone else on the Harvest Moon to retain their lives. Jacques would eventually join them, also wanting to live forever himself, and would be the one who would ferry people to the island. As a plot, it's definitely a turn that you wouldn't ever see coming, even with little hints like Simone's love of cats and her pendant. But there's actually another reason for why our villains are evil cat creatures. You see, the screenplay writer of the movie, Glenn Leopold, is well known for being a part of the animation industry for decades, having worked as a writer for Scooby since the era of Scrappy-Doo. But he's worked for over 40 other cartoons as well, some of which are well known among those of us who love animation. The main reason I bring this up is the fact that the script for Zombie Island is actually a reworked script from another series that never got made. And if it wasn't for the fact that this is well-established knowledge, I wouldn't have ever believed it. But the Zombie Island original script is from SWAT Cats. Yeah, it's kind of amazing to hear. I can only guess my brother, who loved SWAT Cats growing up, is going to absolutely flip when he sees this episode. But yeah, that's why our bad guys are cats. At the very least, they made it work as a Scooby-Doo film otherwise. It's through this exposition in the film, though, that we learn that the zombies of Zombie Island are actually good, just trying to warn everyone away so they don't get drained by our cat villains as well. Which, while they're probably not the first good zombies ever to exist, I find it kind of funny that the first time we really get to see traditional scary monsters in Scooby-Doo, and it turns out they've been trying to help out the gang this entire time. We come to the only part of the movie that I kind of dislike, which is how our heroes defeat the villains. Mostly because Scooby and Shaggy are simply just running back and forth, getting cornered by Simone, Lena, Jacques, or the zombies. And while they don't know about the magical voodoo dolls, you would still think the pair would run to help their clearly distressed friends. The gang eventually saves themselves, with Velma being able to get her doll and free herself, helping the others and then using the dolls to go and take control of Simone and Lena. This is why you wear transformation-friendly clothing, people. The gang themselves don't end up really fighting the cat monsters or the zombies much at this point, mostly just doing what they can to keep themselves from being drained. Fortunately, our villains are on a time limit, and they just miss the window to do the deed, leaving them for dead. From here on out, it's pretty much just the final wrap-up. The zombies, now that they've been avenged, fade away. Bo the gardener turns out to have been an undercover detective this entire time, looking into the missing people. The entire group packs up to leave the island, heading home, where we get one little last bit of Scooby-Doo humor before we fade into the credits. To say that the reception to Zombie Island was good is frankly an understatement, considering, as I said before, people think that this movie helped revive Scooby-Doo as a franchise. It's considered to be a big hit. And that's with it not even being released in theaters, which was originally planned. But Warner Brothers knows just how well their Batman direct-to-video movies were doing and suggested the same with Scooby. This and a big marketing push cemented the movie into being the big hit that it was. It sadly didn't win any awards or anything of the like, but I'm pretty sure that comes down more to the fact that this was a, as I said, direct-to-video movie. It wasn't looked at for being popular or good at the time. Even back in the 90s, anything that was a direct-to-video affair usually had dubious qualities at best. Warner Brothers was kind of the exception back then, and even so, some of the later Scooby-Doo movies kind of did fall into that level of what the hell are we looking at quality. And me mentioning that leads us to the other thing I've sadly got to bring up. The retcon movie that serves as a sequel to this one, Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island. For a lot of fans of the original film, this movie is something that is honestly pretty despised. Part of the reason for this boils down to the movie trampling or ignoring a lot of the ideas and themes of this one, but kind of like how we talked about last time with Percy Jackson, it really deals with them using the Zombie Island name without understanding the core elements of the film in question. This mostly comes down to the fact that the writers for the Scooby-Doo movies at the time, Jeremy Adams and his colleague Tim Sheridan, have a particular stance when it comes to the franchise, which is to say that no real supernatural elements really happen in Scooby-Doo. And you know what? Sure, that's okay. Every writer has some parts that they think is the right way to go, even if another writer might not agree with them. That's the benefit of having different opinions, and it can build into different wonderful stories. The problem is when you give writers who believe Scooby-Doo shouldn't do real monsters sequels to a part of the Scooby-Doo universe that had real monsters. When you got a writer whose core idea for a sequel goes against the core ideas of the previous movie or series, then you've got the wrong writer. This is basically the same problem that I had with Maleficent, where it disregards what came before it and says to the audience, oh yeah, that version never happened, here's the truth. It's a poor way to tell any story and is just going to upset fans of the original work. But let's move back to the original Zombie Island, since we really need to nail down what makes this such a solid movie. If I had to be hard-pressed about it, I'd say it's probably because it evolved the idea of Scooby-Doo, did it seriously, but also respected where it came from, and did its best to incorporate those elements into the movie. All the gang feel like they still have something in common with the original Where Are You counterparts while growing up from that point. You still got a lot of things that are your normal level of silly that you would expect from Scooby-Doo, but it was balanced out by the actual effort to put in the horror elements, with the zombies being done in such a way that I'm certain there were a few kids that were scared by this. Perhaps the most impressive thing is how well the movie does all of these things in just a little over an hour. While not perfect, as there are some parts where the horror and the humor of the movie are at odds with each other, it's honestly something that I hold as a gold standard of the franchise. This is the way that I feel like Scooby should have gone with how their series and franchise work as a whole. The vast majority of the time, Scooby and the gang will run into criminals in masks, but there will always be that one mystery where they smack into the monsters that are real. But even with an entire zombie island giving them grief, we know that the mystery is always going to be solved by Scooby-Dooby-Doo! With all that said, I hope I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Hopefully you'll follow along with my content by subscribing and doing all the other things that gives us YouTubers life. If you wish to support me a bit more, I do have a Patreon where you can get access to bonus content. But until next time, stay frosty.